Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of Minecraft Disney World. Today we're going to be taking a step outside of the parks and we're going to be looking at an attraction that isn't actually an attraction so much as it is an integral part of the transportation system at Disney World. We're going to be taking a look at the monorail. Now, the monorail for a lot of people is very much like an attraction. It's something you look forward to, that you want to go to and experience when you're at Disney World because it is very different from most transportation systems around the world. And like most of the things that we discuss on this show, it has a very deep-rooted history with Walt Disney himself and with Disneyland. In fact, the monorail and the concept of the monorail goes all the way back to 1957 when Walt was visiting Europe and he learned of the monorail system in Germany, which is being developed by this Allweg Corporation. And the consensus was generally that the monorail was the transportation system of the future, despite the fact that conceptually the monorail has been around long before 1957. It had the sort of infrastructure that allowed for, a futuristic sort of city setting to thrive on. So Walt, of course, loving all things futuristic and loving the concept of city planning, jumped onto the monorail and ended up putting the monorail in Disneyland. And at the time, it was essentially like an attraction on its own. I believe it took people from the Disneyland Hotel to Disneyland, although it was sort of just like across the street. It wasn't too long of a trip. But that concept then carried over to Walt Disney World as a primary mode of transportation between the resorts in Disney World and the theme parks. Now, like I said, Walt originally envisioned this as like the transportation system of the future. Unfortunately, he started implementing the monorail at a time where American culture was obsessing itself with automobiles and cars, and this was the time when you saw the interstate system like building itself up, and for American culture, driving was the thing to do. So unfortunately, the monorail sort of never picked up, never became like the sort of popular transportation system that I think Walt hoped it would be. However, it is integral to Disney World. In 1971, when Walt Disney World opened, the monorail system opened along with it, and at that point there were two tracks. There was the resort and the express track. The express track took passengers straight from the Ticket and Transportation Center to the Magic Kingdom, while the resort track went around and stopped at all the resorts and then stopping at the Magic Kingdom. Of course, that was then expanded later on. There is a loop that goes to Epcot that connects to the Ticket and Transportation Center. Now, to Disney's credit, and just as evidence as to how popular Disney World is, the monorail system has a daily ridership of about 157,000 passengers. That is per day. And over its 14.7 mile span of track, Disney looks at about 50 million guests per year. So this is, while it is just a theme park, this sort of has the ridership of, a small city. So I guess in a weird way, Walt got his dream and the monorail served, Disney World, which very much earns the name World, right? Some interesting facts about the monorail are that the concrete beams that were used for the monorail track were actually taken over from where they were assembled and built in Washington State. So now if you think about it, Walt Disney World is in Florida. These were made in Washington. They pretty much went about as far within the United States as possible to get these beams over. Another interesting fact is that up until around 2009, you used to be able to ride into the front cab of the monorail. If you asked somebody and you waited, you would be able to sit with the pilot. And of course, monorail drivers are called pilots as opposed to conductors or anything like that. You could fit up to 4 people in the front cab. They gave out like cool little co-pilot licenses. I actually have memories as a kid of getting one of those. They were basically like little business cards that said co-pilot and you put your name in it. Unfortunately, due to an incident in 2009, they stopped doing that for the safety of guests. But that was something they did offer at one point. And of course, who could talk about the monorails without talking about the famous phrase,
"Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas."
And for some reason, people have like clung on to that, and that has become such like a popular catchphrase for fans of Disney. So much so that there's a t-shirt in Disney you can buy with the phrase in Spanish. I don't know why. I think it would be such an interesting study to look at how this phrase caught on to become so popular. I guess just the constant repetition. So much so that this was recorded by Jack Wagner, who is known as the voice of Disneyland because he did all of this stuff for Disneyland. And they actually have kept that version, despite the fact that they've gotten new people to voice over new narrations while you're on the monorail. They still keep that original, "Please stand clear of the doors." Which is just really great, and it shows that Disney is keen on these sort of trends that people pick up on, and they're willing to, have fun with it. So that's just like a really short look at the monorail system. If you're at Disney World, you might actually not use it very much. It depends on whether you're staying at Disney or you're just driving in for the day. However, regardless of how you're getting there, I think it's totally worth going on the monorail at least just once in your life to say you've been on it, because I think like the castle, like Spaceship Earth, the monorail has just become an iconic part of Walt Disney World and just Disney history. I hope you have a fantastic week. Whatever you're doing, make the most of it because it makes it that much better. And I hope to see you all here next week for the next episode of Minecraft Disney World. Bye, everybody.